It looks like we can start, I think. So, welcome everybody. My name is Jonathan Milne. I am the VP of AI Services here at DemandSpring, and I'm super excited to bring today to you Andrew Riker, VP of Market Insights and Growth at Brandlight. Brandlight is our latest new tech partner here at DemandSpring, and I think a hot topic this year is going to be AI visibility, or whether or not we call this AI visibility, GEO, AEO, or whatever new acronym that gets created in 2026. I am sure many of us are going to have more questions than answers, but our goal here today is to hopefully shed some light on some of the things and trends we have seen. And so with that, Andrew, why don't you give yourself a quick intro to everybody here today?
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. Like Jonathan mentioned, I run VP of Market Insights at Brandlight. We are an enterprise grade AI visibility platform. There's a lot of acronyms going to be thrown out today: LLMs, RAG, UCP, ACP. There's a lot of tech talk, and the acronyms never slow down in marketing. But it is a wild time to be in the search space. There's a lot of interest there, and really excited to dive in a little bit about what we do at Brandlight, who we cater to, a little bit about our platform, and then speak together about kind of the future and what brands and leaders can do to adjust to this new environment.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. So let's just jump right in. Well, you guys are fairly young. I was going to say every year, but last year you guys created a fairly intensive survey of data around CMOs and others, right? So why don't we talk about some of the key highlights that you saw in that survey, and then maybe that'll kind of get us thinking about where to take this conversation today.
Sure. Yeah. So a few of the things that we wanted to understand is what is on the top of CMOs' minds, right? So what are the things they're thinking about? What kind of stresses are they under? And I thought it was really interesting that sort of part of our study is we interviewed or surveyed 500 CMOs from enterprise companies, so 500 million and up. And one of the top stats that we saw was about ownership, right? So we asked them about who owns AI search at your company. Last year, we saw that there were a lot of strike teams being developed internally about sort of this center of excellence on how we go about AI. And the data that we saw was almost exactly statistically split between external agencies, internal SEO teams, CMOs, and general digital marketing teams at 17%. We saw basically a near split between who owns it, which tells me that nobody owns it. There's no consensus on the industry on who owns AI search because, as of last week, ChatGPT, saying they're launching ads, now media is involved in the conversation. And so it being a team sport with PR, social engineering, marketing, we've seen it split between media teams, brand teams, and search teams at companies. So that was a really interesting stat. To share that. Any thoughts on that internally when you work with companies about who owns the thing, the line item
For
or the budget?
sure. I kind of agree that, it's like kind of the racy format, responsible, accountable, informed, and consulted. So, I do believe the CMO is responsible for this, but who's accountable to do the work, Andrew, I think is different. And what we find is the CMOs come to us and they're the ones that are highlighting we have this challenge. So they're asking questions, what should we do? How do we resolve it? Their board or their CEOs are asking them, why aren't we showing up? How does this work? How do we influence and all that stuff? So I think that's it. I think the natural starting point in most organizations is the SEO team or the content team, depending on your strengths of an organization. And then as soon as you start having the conversations and you start to educate the teams, you quickly do realize, Andrew, it starts to permeate across everybody, right? So, when we think about, how do you push your content strategy across all organizations to influence AI visibility, it's no longer just your product team or your SEO team or your blogging team or your social team. They all have to do it in sync, and they all need to understand that each of them has a unique change in their strategy that has to be reflected in this new world, right? And so just because you're doing content does not mean you're doing the right content anymore, right? Just because you're blogging doesn't mean you're doing the right blogs anymore. So you have to start to adjust your strategies. And so for us, it's a balance of bringing these teams together to work together, educating them on what's going on. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Maybe, Andrew, maybe we can dig into Brandlight. Maybe you can share us a few, examples of it so people can see what we're talking about. And then from there, we can kind of get into, how does this impact the way you're thinking about designing content? What type of content? What's the structure of your content? What's the schema on your content and all those things, right?
Yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, we can orient this in the Brandlight product. I'll show a peek behind the curtain. I'm not a salesperson, but I think there's a lot of value in this new world we're in. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of acronyms. There's a lot that people are learning internally and trying to share and educate, and the space is new, right? And so I think it's important to add some visuals to this. So let me just share my screen real quick, and I can run through a few pieces of the Brandlight platform. So AI visibility is a new thing. A lot of people have been testing tools for maybe the last year. And so I want to peek behind the curtain for this demo account for Chase as an example. And so dashboards are very important, right? So for all levels of an organization, CMOs care about different KPIs than the analysts that care about metrics, right? And so as we develop a new language in AI, I think it's really important to determine what are the important things that we should measure our business and our success, and ultimately where should we put resources to help accentuate. So high level, there's a score, which, there's a proprietary algorithm that most companies would try to figure out what is the most accurate, and we're very confident in our data and how we interpret score and visibility. There's unbranded visibility score, which ultimately is how you convert people that have this demand or this problem identified that are trying to find a solution and go down the funnel. And then what is the AI traffic volume impact to your brand over time, which is a proprietary metric that people use search volume or testing data with CDNs and all of this stuff to identify exactly how you calculate that. So high level dashboard, very, very important. This is something that is obviously going to change over time as we get more data and we get more feedback and evolve the product with the needs of our audience, which again is more in the enterprise matrix organizations that have a lot of stakeholders. So
Yeah,
high
and
level there.
let's just dug into the far right one for a little for everybody. So AI traffic volume is an interesting one. This demo data, I think it's live demo data, is showing it's increasing drastically. What we're seeing with our clients is something similar to this. What we're seeing is about 20% is known attribution to the AI models. What we're also finding is that most of the brands that are asking their clients or asking their leads, on intake forms, on demo forms and stuff like that, they're actually now seeing an extra 50% on top of that. So they're seeing between like 30 to 40% attribution now to AI, right? So it's very clear in the last 6 months. I think everyone needs to understand the large language models, including Google, are going to an AI first or a large language model like search experience than traditional search. And I think we're going to see over the next 6 months, that's going to be pushed even more. And I think everyone needs to understand that attribution is going to go up much, much higher.
For sure. Yeah. I think there's this dark funnel of like the great decoupling that's happening, right? Your brand visibility on AI surfaces is sometimes hard to measure. You don't know the impact of your mentions. Historically, we used, discovery, which happened in search, and then you went to a website and you had this clear like waterfall to find out what's valuable. Now it's what is the value of my brand being outranking or out positioning in terms of visibility someone else. And so as AI develops more and more users, we notice that, Google is still king globally. There's a lot of entrants and challengers like Perplexity, Claude, et cetera. And so finding the sort of amount of usage that these AI engines have and looking at what they are versus traditional search is sort of how we calculate this. But this is really important. The velocity that this is happening is unprecedented. It's really wild and really, really cool to see. So I will move on to the next.
We got a great question here. Does that
Oh, sure.
attribution capture just AI crawlers and readers, or is it citation click-throughs?
There's no citation click-through data. We don't have that yet. When ads come out, they'll be providing that. But yeah, in terms of traffic volume, it is purely based on click-through rate, well, sort of click-through rate of that. So yeah, it's not using data from platforms yet because that's still lock and key at the moment.
Yeah. And I think the analytics tools, like Google Analytics and others are starting to get a little bit more click-through data in them. I know for example, Google, you have to create a custom report today to grab that data. It's not
Yep.
super clear. for the person who asked the question, but it's definitely moving that direction for sure. And it's a great
Yep,
idea to say, hey, am I being cited in the search or am I being clicked through? Right? Those are two different things that we need to make sure are clearly articulated in the data set. So great question. Yep.
exactly. Kind of moving on into what's really important is queries, right? So what are the questions that people are asking to find your brand? And so in Brandlight, for example, what's the secure, easy to use checkout accounting, check writing? This is sort of, I'll just go to overview here, what it would look like. If you want to know your visibility for a specific query, Brandlight queries it all the time. We develop a stat sig to determine, are you being mentioned frequently over time, so we can monitor this in your presence over time across engines. Is your brand used? We can look at query fan out here, like the actual query fan outs that are using. So if you want to know similar keywords, it's right there. We also grab the exact snapshot and response for each of the engines. So when it comes to understanding your queries, it's really important that you do queries that actually matter, that actual users would be using. This is something that we help with our customers develop what the right queries are to measure, because, good data in is good data out, right? So it's really important that it starts with understanding the right data that you want to look at to emulate your customers.
So here I think it's good for everybody to understand that I presented this picture before of the old words and the new words. So the old words are keywords, the new words are
Yep.
queries, right?
Yep.
What's fascinating to me is that we're still using keywords, or our AI is still using keywords, but they're fanning them out and they're doing a few special things with it. So I think it's worth for everyone to understand that when you now are in a large language model in your chat window, talking to it and asking for things like, what's the best tool to use for AI visibility? It's going to do a few things behind the scenes. So one of the things it's going to do on your behalf that you might not see as a user very clearly is a term called fanning out queries. So what it's going to do is going to look at your question and try to figure out how to best answer that for you, and based on the context of what it knows about you, maybe they know that you're in industry, maybe they know what size organization they are, maybe you've talked about budgets in the past or something. It's going to take whatever context it has about you to try to answer your question on your behalf by grabbing you all these resources. Now, there's been a few trends we've seen, Andrew, right, over the last 6 months. One is the number of fanning out query questions. That seems to be growing. So when you ask one question, the AI is creating multiple questions for you. And then the second thing that we're seeing is that when they take those questions, the amount of sources they're using has grown exponentially. And I think, Andrew, you're just saying now that they're starting to pull back a little bit because maybe they pulled too many different data sources. And so, yeah, there's some really interesting trends we as marketers need to understand and monitor for sure.
Yeah, and over time, I mean, I think the average Google query and search is like for keywords is 3, and I think for ChatGPT it's like 10 to 15. And so I think that as users become more familiar with how to get good prompts in, they're going to use longer words to be more specific. They'll know they get better answers. And so as consumers start to adapt to this, you'll see the inputs and the prompts or the queries kind of increase. So yeah, very, very interesting.
And I think it's
Um,
also good for everyone to understand. So we have all these queries, all this stuff happening, right? Which is kind of the new AI world, but it's still attached to the old SEO world. So those queries, those questions still get submitted to Bing, to Google, to the old SEO engines to help them find the pages, right? To pull in to give you this, right? So when people keep saying, SEO is dead, I'm not a big believer in that, but if we need to do a good headline and suck people into a webinar, sure, SEO is dead. But the reality is the front end has changed, but a lot of the back end today is still similar, but it's evolving. It's not gonna remain static, right? But we're gonna see some evolution of it for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And that the CMO survey that we did, over 500 enterprise CMOs said that their traditional search traffic is up 88% in the last year. So this zero click, everything's dying. Yeah, it is happening, but the demand is still there. The demand hasn't gone down. It might get a little fuzzier. It might take a little more, elbow grease to understand the measurement side of things. But yeah, very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on to citation visibility, kind of I think this is a clear view of what domains are being cited for your brand. Again, you can see here there's all different kinds of sources being cited. So this is
There's
for
Reddit.
Chase. Yeah, Reddit. Yep, number one was still going up at the time. So you can see here that at a domain level, you can also see it at a source level, which is very interesting. So what I generally like to do is look at source owner is not owned. Because yeah, I care about our stuff, but I care about what else is out there. And so here we can see exactly the top sources. Let's say you're on like a brand management team and you want to find all the negative sentiment on Reddit, for example. We could filter onto that. You can have your customer support go out to Reddit and find those answers and really find what the the issues are with your product or service. And so there's a lot that can be done with citations over time. I think that this is one of the most crucial parts to look at because every industry and sub-industry has their own citation fingerprint, I call it, because ultimately this changes over time. Google partnered with Reddit some years ago and they got all their training data. They used that because they wanted that to be the voice of the internet. Over time, we've seen Reddit go up and down because they're finding more valuable citation sources. And so it's not set and forget, getting a snapshot today, it's going to change in 3 months. It's something to monitor for what the big authoritative brands are because new authoritative brands and domains can be king. We recently saw that a logistics shipper, mid-sized company, is outranking a non-branded query. So this isn't like stack the deck bias versus United States Postal Service and UPS. So like a $50 million logistics company is outranking United States Postal Service, which is just wild to see. And for big brands, it means you need to play defense. And for small entrants, it means that you can win if you do things right. You know how to appear. Very, very interesting stuff that we've seen here.
Super. And I think the key message for everybody kind of reminds me of SEO, back early in my career when it was the wild, wild west and we used to do keyword stuffing and, hidden links and publication sites and stuff like that. There used to be all kinds of tricks. I think that's kind of where we're at today until
Yep.
the tools get a little bit more sophisticated. And I think Reddit's a good example. Its impact went from 6 months, you better be on it or you can't be found to,
Yeah.
it's still important, but it's not like if you're not there, you're not going to be found. It's just additional sources, right? So I think, if anybody's been in the SEO space for a long time, we were used to in the last, 3 to 5 years, an update every quarter kind of thing to kind of see what little changes are happening to the model to see where the algorithms are going. Right now in the AI visibility, I would say it's what do you think, Andrew? Every couple of weeks, there's something, and the shifts are a little bit bigger just because there's more errors being made as they start to figure out how this new technology works.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Nothing to add. Perfectly done.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just going to run through this real quick, and then I think we can shift gears. So in terms of engines, this is really important because engines change their model over time. And what you're ranking for today, ranking for, see, being an SEO for 15 years, I still get in these habits. What you're visible for today can change with model updates, with a lot of different things. And so it's important to monitor this over time because we can see here, for example, like Chase is doing so well here. There's other entrants that are coming in, new citation sources are help changing your AI visibility. And really what's really cool is that it's important that as a brand level, sure, am I being cited, am I not? But when you take queries and you build them effectively, you can match them to categories, which is very important for understanding the different areas of your business and how you might be winning in AI search, but you might be losing in a specific area. Like Chime is winning an account setup and approval process, which we have hundreds of queries that we query all the time to determine this. But in banking access and support channels, which is a different query subset, they're not doing so well. So it gives focus on exactly what areas of the business, what types of content to engage and activate for to increase presence. So,
And I think something CMOs and all leaders need to start thinking about now is that over the next year, 2 years, I think we have to start to think about each engine, each LLM search platform should not be treated equally. I think we're going to see a bifurcation on the user types coming from them. So if you remember in analytics, you used to get very clear signals of, country, devices, location, and other things. I think you're going to start to find, like, for example, today, I would say Claude has a lot more IT-like people inside of Claude than, Perplexity, which is a little bit more and I really generic. Need to adjust my strategy for this one. right?
For sure.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, even though Google has market share for traditional search, interesting that I saw that specifically for financial services, Copilot is extremely important. There's actually more brands mentioned on Copilot than what um, ChatGPT or Google AI Mode or Google AI Overview shows for citations. So in terms of brand visibility and what these engines recommend, Copilot in financial services, very strong and something you shouldn't ignore. And so these sort of insights, like I mentioned at the start, it's not just industry, it's also sub-industry. So for finance, it could be lending, it could be credit cards, completely different citation patterns. Some might cite Investopedia, some might cite Points Guy, some might do it like Fannie Mae, like completely different in terms of authoritative sources for what traditional search people think of what's most important. So very, very interesting to understand your own fingerprint. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last insight I'm going to share with people, and then we'll open up the lines for questions. Is there's a, I kind of think of how things transition. So if I think about SEO to kind of AI visibility, if you think about big shifts, we went from kind of domain authority, right? So how good is your domain? And we used to see rankings of that on tools. Then we went to page authority because we realized domains don't just rank, pages rank. And then you start to see kind of the EAT criteria from Google. So if anyone does not know that, it's EATT. Go look it up. It talks about the requirements that say, why does John rank higher or lower than Andrew when they write the exact same topic, the same, the exact same content, is because someone has more expertise, right? Then someone else should be ranked higher. So we went to kind of this person identity. And then what's fascinating, if you look at Google's latest kind of patents, they're starting to, and if you look at kind of where AI is going, they're no longer taking your page. Although they're showing you your page as being part of the index, what we're starting to see, and if you think about this, and we used to see this with search, you remember when you used to search a word and it used to show you exactly where that word was on the page? Where it went to that block. The reality is with AI models, we're finding that it's actually indexing a context block, right? So it's saying, nice blog, but for the answer that just Andrew just gave you, I'm going to take just this block plus this other block from this page and this block from that page. I'm going to summarize those and give you the answer. So they're not taking the entire page, which is a very new way for us to think about, right? And as writers and
Yeah.
content writers and all that stuff, it's completely going to change how we think about what we present and how we present the story than just having a page that answers everything,
For
right?
sure. It's almost as if you need to not let AI read the whole page and then think to understand it. You need to force feed it to them. And that's why key insights, executive summary, TLDR at the top, they want to come in, analyze. I mean, old SEO is like, let's stuff it with keywords, the most important thing at the top and long form paragraphs, like that's out the door. They're the same way that featured snippets when and Q&A were really hot like 5 years ago, and you used to see exactly where Google was citing, that passage or that context on a page. That's just what LLMs do by nature, and how they interpret data and probabilistically share it. So yeah, very interesting that it's way more surgical. It's not about this create a 5,000 word article that is super in depth. I mean, just make your content eligible for LLMs by making it structurally intact, answer questions, because ultimately you just want to be able to answer questions with your content
Totally.
anyway. Yeah.
All right, so I'll open up it to our audience here. If anybody has questions, feel free to put them into the conversation in the chat room, and I would love to hear their questions. So I'm going to challenge the audience to submit a question. But while I wait for our first question, um, what do you think has changed, Andrew, from like the last 6 months of last year into kind of what do you think is going to change in the next 6 months? So kind of big macro trends. What did you guys see kind of in the last half of last year, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, I mean, the AI wars rage on, right? Between all of the players, the AI native search engines and Google for the most part. And I think that they're all trying to outdo one another and use their own leverage. So for example, Google is using their own ecosystem with Google Shopping and places in
Mm,
their locations that they have. That's something that ChatGPT does not have data on. They don't have the ecosystem of all the brand reviews, product reviews, et cetera. And so they're really leaning into what they're strong at and accentuating their strengths to sort of dominate in that area. And so I think as ChatGPT wants to fight for market share and consumers use it and trust it, they need to do things to be, advantageous with their data set. And they just,
Mm.
recently ChatGPT ads came out last week. That's them with a left hook trying to, fight back in for dominance for the channel. And so you see Sam Altman like code red, you see a lot of things that are happening for them to try to connect with the consumers using. So the change, well, they're all trying to play to their strengths. There's the entrance, the AI natives, and then there's Google. And I think that Gemini 3 personally, I think is in a really good spot. I think Claude is very strong. Perplexity is still there, but I think the next phase is monetization and advertising,
Mhm.
because that's ultimately what consumers are going to depend on for the synthesized answer when shopping for products. We've seen a ton of data come out this holiday season in Q4 about how many more people are using AI conversations to identify products that they need to buy. And so as the people go, the money comes and the ads come in. And I think that's really the next step in the next 6 months. And that's what we're building towards at Brandlight is helping service media teams and being efficient with budget and prioritization for media spend. So I think that is the next frontier is the agentic commerce side of things and having sort of bots speak to bots in a way to help users sort of find like traverse the internet, discover, synthesize, and buy. Yeah.
Yeah, so for anybody who's doing B2B e-commerce, it is worthwhile looking into this acronym called UCP, right? Is the
Yep.
right one, Andrew? And then there's another one as well. And what's fascinating about those is that behind the scenes, they're also using an acronym called A2A, which is agent to agent. So what they're trying to do is figure out how to take data sources around, like if you've ever been in the e-commerce space, Google Shopping used to be the standard to kind of submit your products to Google. They're trying to say how do an AI bot know about your products and include them in search or in AI visibility. So that's something to definitely check out and learn about more and dig into it. And then as you think about these kind of changes, what's also fascinating, like you mentioned a little bit about it, let's talk about open AI ads, right? A new frontier. I think we're going to find a very interesting new way of us doing ads contextually that we never did before. We had lookalike audiences, we had keywords and stuff like that. But if you think about how much data the AIs are collecting about us based on our search history and all that stuff that they're storing, I'm very curious on how much it's going to be opened up to us as users when we start to try to target people on these search queries and on OpenAI, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun world.
For sure. I think it's going to be a feast for marketers that are that first get there. There's going to be long lasting brand equity that's gained in this new channel. And I think that marketing leaders are going to have to figure out, well, how much money do we put to this, right? Like,
Mhm.
is it an incrementality play? Is it something we're taking away from display or banner, or how are we paying for this? What subset of money? Is this still a test and learn scenario? So I think that that's going to be really interesting and a question that isn't really necessarily going to be backed by data and ROI. I think CMOs are going to have to go to CROs and be like, or CFOs and be like, okay, we anticipate, once people understand CPCs and or however the model is that they end up doing, it's going to be really interesting to see how much money is actually put in the start, and then the data studies that are going to come out and the research to say, we have a much higher conversion rate because everyone knows that conversational search is kind of an extension to your sales team. You should treat it almost like an owned property. You just need to make sure you control how your brand is being mentioned and your products are being mentioned, but it is an accentuation of your brand, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Now we got one last minute, so I thought we will provide the audience a little bit of a takeaway. So, at Demand Spring, one of the things we do is AI visibility search audits and help coach and advise teams. And so people kind of actually like, what do you do with this kind of data, and what do we do as a team? So, real quick, we talk about three pillars, right? So this is not a sales pitch. I just want to have people have a takeaway. So the three pillars is first of all, you got to start off with technical SEO. So you still need to have a website that goes really fast. AI crawlers that come to your website to index need speed. If your website is slow, does not have proper schemas, it's hidden with some JavaScript and they can't read the text, they can't get included, right? So you have some technical SEO that you have to do. And then we talk about kind of what is your brand and own strategy of content? What kind of content are you creating, publishing, and doing to have like thinner content that answers questions? Are you adding FAQs? Are you adding stuff like TDLRs at the top of pages? Are you summarization, things like that, right? And creating good, strong content clusters. And the third one, I think that for a lot of brands are struggling with is what we call offsite. So getting into Reddit, getting into other blog sites, paying for publications now. As Andrew, you saw that list there. You had a few kind of sites there that are, they're pay to play. And you're noticing that those pay to plays are being picked up, right? And so some of your old publication strategies that you had as a CMO are kind of coming back again around the whole branded strategy, right? So those are kind of three quick kind of pillar areas as a team to think about. And then as you kind of reach out to your team to talk about it, see how those kind of each, as we talked about at the very start of it, how each team can fit into those three pillars to bring the whole strategy together. So, Andrew, I know we're out of time. Maybe next time we'll go a little deeper and maybe run an hour's conversation or webinar. It's 30 minutes is maybe not long enough, but I really appreciate your time today. And thanks to everybody who joined us. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think it all starts with confidence in data to get budget, to get resources, to understand measurement of where you're at, and that's what we provide at Brandlight. So going to a leader and asking for money, or you don't want to start with I think and I feel. It's not going to end well if you come with that. You need to come with hard facts. And I think that understanding where you're at and what you need to do to get there with a strategic partner, I think is very important. So measurement, and data. That's my final word. Yeah.
And then right. Content.
Right.
Content. Yeah, there you go. That's the third one. Awesome.
For sure.
Well, thanks so much, Andrew. Thanks to everybody else. If anyone has any questions for Andrew or myself, feel free to reach out. We're both on LinkedIn. More than happy to answer any questions, but we appreciate everyone's time today. And we look forward to connecting on our next one. So thank you very much.